$314. That is what Tamara Jenkins earned every week before taxes, working the morning shift at a dollar store in Laurel, Mississippi. After withholdings, she took home roughly $260. Rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Laurel in the fall of 2020 averaged $850 a month. That leaves Tamara about $190 per month for food, transportation, diapers, medicine, and every other cost associated with keeping herself and her 4-year-old son alive. The math does not work. It has never worked. And when her landlord raised the rent by $75 that October, the math stopped pretending to work entirely. She was evicted on November 12th. The shelter in Laurel had a wait list of 11 weeks. The nearest shelter with open beds was in Hattiesburg, 30 miles away, which would have meant losing the dollar store job and the $260 a week that was barely keeping them fed. A motel room at $49 a night would consume her entire paycheck in 5 days. So Tamara did what people do when every conventional option has been eliminated. She started sleeping in a 2006 Chevy Malibu in the parking lot of a church off Highway 15, with her son buckled into his car seat in the back, wrapped in every blanket she owned. That was the beginning, but it was not the end. Because 6 months later, Tamara was living in a fully insulated, off-grid home with solar-powered lights, a rainwater collection system, a propane cooking station, and a locking steel door that nobody could kick in. She built it from a damaged shipping container she bought for $250. And the methods she used are so effective that they have spread, quietly and without any media attention, to at least 25 other families across the rural Deep South who have built similar structures using almost identical techniques. This is exactly how she did it. The container came from a government surplus auction in Gulfport, Mississippi. Shipping containers cycle out of commercial use constantly, and almost nobody outside the logistics industry pays attention to where they go. Containers that sustain cosmetic damage, minor denting, or fail maritime inspection standards get pulled from service and sold in bulk lots at surplus yards and online auctions across the Gulf Coast. A standard 20-foot container in good condition sells for $1,500 to $3,000. But a container with dented side panels, surface rust, or a warped door frame sells for far less because commercial buyers do not want them. Tamara found a 20-foot container with 2 dented wall panels and a door that needed adjustment at a surplus yard outside Gulfport. It was priced at $250 because no commercial buyer would touch it. The dents were cosmetic. The steel frame was structurally sound. The floor was solid marine-grade plywood. She paid cash from money she had been saving by eating 1 meal a day for 3 months. Getting a 20-foot steel box from Gulfport to a piece of land outside Laurel, roughly 100 miles north, is not a small problem when you have no truck, no trailer, and no money for professional hauling. A flatbed transport would have cost $400 minimum. Tamara solved this the same way she solved most problems during this period. She asked for help. A man from her church who drove a flatbed for a logging company agreed to haul the container on a Sunday when the truck was not in use. She paid him $40 in gas money and a home-cooked meal when the project was finished. That container arrived on a patch of land outside Laurel on a Saturday morning in May of 2021, lowered onto the red Mississippi clay by a logging truck with a hydraulic arm, and sat there looking like exactly what it was: a steel box in a field. What it would become was something else entirely. But first, she needed the land. And this is the part of the story that surprises people who have never spent time in rural Mississippi. Tamara did not squat on public property. She did not hide a container in the woods behind a gas station. She knocked on doors along the county roads outside Laurel until she found what she was looking for: An elderly man owned 7 acres of land that had not been farmed or maintained in over a decade. Brush had overtaken most of the property. The county had sent him notices about the condition of the lot. He could not physically maintain it, and his children lived out of state. Tamara offered a simple trade. She would clear the brush, maintain the land, mow the grass along the road frontage, and check on his house during winter. In exchange, he would let her place her container on the back 2 acres, out of sight from the road, with access to his outdoor water spigot and a single electrical outlet on the exterior of his barn. He agreed. There was no lease, no contract, just a handshake between 2 people who each had something the other needed. This kind of informal land arrangement is woven into the fabric of rural Southern communities. Property owners get free maintenance and a sense of security. The person placing the structure gets a stable location without the financial burden of rent. County zoning in most rural Mississippi jurisdictions does not require building permits for structures under 200 square feet that are not connected to municipal water or sewer. A standard 20-foot shipping container has a footprint of roughly 160 square feet. Tamara knew this before she bought the container. She had researched permit thresholds at the public library in Laurel on the same computer she used to search for surplus auctions. The first phase of the conversion was cutting openings in the steel walls. A shipping container is a sealed metal box. Without windows and ventilation, it becomes an oven in Mississippi summers and a condensation chamber in winter. Tamara needed 2 windows and a modified door opening. She did not own an angle grinder. She borrowed one from a man at her church who did auto body work, along with 3 cutting discs and a pair of welding gloves. She marked her window openings with chalk and blue painter's tape, measuring twice with a borrowed tape measure before making a single cut. The angle grinder threw sparks across the red clay as she carved 2 24 by 36-inch window openings into the corrugated steel walls. The work took an entire Saturday. She wore safety glasses from the dollar store where she worked and stuffed cotton balls in her ears because she could not afford proper ear protection. The door opening required widening the existing container door frame by 8 inches on one side to accept a standard exterior door she found at the Habitat for Humanity Restore in Hattiesburg for $20. Insulation was the next critical problem, and it is the problem that separates a livable container home from a metal box that is unbearable in every season. Steel conducts heat and cold with brutal efficiency. In July in Mississippi, the interior of an uninsulated shipping container can exceed 140 degrees Fahrenheit. In January, the steel walls radiate cold inward and create condensation that drips from every surface. Tamara needed insulation. Spray foam insulation, the ideal product for metal structures, costs between $1 and $2 per square foot when professionally installed. For a 20-foot container, that would run over $1,000. She had no money for professional installation, but she had learned through the same informal network that told her about surplus auctions that spray foam insulation contractors regularly discard partial cans and leftover product from residential jobs. A single residential attic insulation job generates 3 to 5 partially used cans of spray foam that are thrown away because contractors cannot resell opened product. Tamara visited 3 insulation contractors in the Laurel area and asked if she could have their discarded partial cans. 2 of them said yes. Over a period of 4 weeks, she collected enough partial cans to foam the entire interior ceiling and upper wall sections of the container. The lower walls she insulated with rigid foam board panels salvaged from a renovation dumpster at a construction site on the south side of town. She cut the panels with a utility knife and glued them to the steel walls with construction adhesive, then covered everything with pallet wood planking for a finished interior surface. The condensation problem required a separate solution. Metal structures sweat when warm, moist interior air contacts cold steel surfaces. This creates mold, destroys belongings, and makes the space unlivable within months. Tamara addressed this with a vapor barrier made from 6mm plastic sheeting, the same material used under concrete slabs. She bought it in a 50-foot roll at a hardware store for $18. She stapled the sheeting to the interior framing before installing the foam board and pallet wood, creating an air gap that prevents moisture from reaching the steel. 4 years later, there is no mold inside her container. The vapor barrier cost $18 and solved a problem that destroys most amateur container conversions within the first year. The off-grid systems are where the real engineering shows. Water comes from the sky. Tamara installed aluminum gutter sections along both long sides of the container roof, angling them toward the rear corners where two 55-gallon food-grade plastic drums sit on cinder block platforms. The drums came free from a catfish processing plant outside Laurel that was discarding them after a production line change. A mesh screen over each drum opening filters leaves and debris. Mississippi receives an average of 56 inches of rainfall per year. A 20-foot container roof captures roughly 8 square feet of water per inch of rainfall. Over a full year, that produces more than enough water for a 2-person household when supplemented by occasional fills from the property owner's outdoor spigot. She purifies collected rainwater with unscented bleach, 8 drops per gallon, and lets it sit for 30 minutes before drinking. Annual purification cost runs about $5. Solar electricity came from damaged solar panels that most people would consider garbage. Solar installation companies in southern Mississippi replace panels regularly due to storm damage, warranty upgrades, and system redesigns. Panels with cracked glass, damaged junction boxes, or reduced output get pulled from rooftops and stacked behind installation warehouses waiting for disposal. A panel operating at 60% efficiency is worthless to a company guaranteeing customers full output. But 60% of a 300-watt panel still produces 180 watts, which is more than enough to charge batteries, run LED lights, charge a phone, and run a small fan. Tamara collected 4 damaged panels from 2 different solar companies in the Hattiesburg area. Both companies gave them away for free because disposing of them actually costs money. She mounted the panels on a simple wooden frame, angled toward the south side of the container roof. The battery bank was built from 2 used car batteries, purchased for $15 each from an auto salvage yard. A charge controller, the device that regulates power flow from the panels to the batteries, cost $35 ordered online and shipped to the Laurel post office. She learned the wiring sequence from a YouTube video series on off-grid solar that she watched repeatedly at the public library, drawing diagrams on notebook paper and bringing them back to the build site. The system powers 4 LED light strips inside the container, a USB charging station, a small 12-volt fan for summer ventilation, and a radio. It is not enough to run an air conditioner or a refrigerator, but it provides light after dark, keeps devices charged, and runs the fan that makes Mississippi summer nights tolerable inside an insulated metal box. Cooking runs on a 2-burner propane camp stove mounted on a plywood counter she built against the front wall. A 20-pound propane tank lasts roughly 6 weeks of regular cooking. She refills it at a gas station for $15. Annual cooking fuel cost is approximately $130. She cooks inside during rain and outside under a welded steel awning during warm months. It is a small extension she built from scrap angle iron that the auto body man at her church helped her weld to the container frame. Ventilation during indoor cooking comes from the 2 cut windows in a 12-inch exhaust vent. She cut into the upper rear wall, covered with hardware cloth, to keep insects out. The interior layout is simple and functional. The front third of the container is the kitchen and living area, with the propane stove, a small table built from pallet wood, and 2 folding chairs donated by the church. The middle section has Tamara's sleeping area on one side, separated by a curtain made from a bedsheet, and storage shelving on the other. The rear third is her son's space. He has a platform bed built from stacked pallets, with a foam mattress given to them by a woman from the food pantry. His drawings are taped to the pallet wood walls. He has a small desk made from a piece of plywood on 2 cinder blocks where he does homework under an LED strip powered by the sun. The total build cost, including the container, transport fuel, all materials, hardware, the charge controller, propane, and every miscellaneous purchase across 5 months of work, came to $412. Tamara had the $250 for the container from savings. The remaining $162 came from her dollar store paychecks over the construction period. That was 4 years ago. She has since upgraded the door to a steel security door salvaged from a demolished office building. She added a small covered porch using corrugated roofing panels and pressure-treated posts she found at a construction dumpster. She built a raised garden bed from cinder blocks where she grows tomatoes, collard greens, and peppers from May through October. Her son, now 8, helps tend the garden and can name every tool in the small collection hanging on hooks inside the container door. The elderly man who owns the property comes by most weekends. What started as a handshake arrangement has turned into something closer to family. Tamara still clears his land, checks on his house, and drives him to medical appointments in Hattiesburg when his children cannot make the trip from out of state. She no longer works at the dollar store. She moved to a warehouse position that pays $13 an hour. The money that would have gone to rent goes instead to food, savings, her son's school supplies, and a fund she started for a larger permanent structure she plans to build on the same property once she saves enough for a proper concrete foundation. But here's what makes this story bigger than one woman in Mississippi. Tamara is not alone. The techniques she used, some learned from others, some figured out through trial and error, match methods that have appeared in at least 25 documented container and micro-shelter builds across rural Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana since 2020. A social worker in Hinds County, Mississippi, described encountering 3 separate families living in converted containers on private land with informal agreements. Each family had discovered the same surplus auction pipeline, the same insulation sourcing method, and the same county code research to stay beneath permit thresholds, without ever meeting each other. The knowledge travels the way survival knowledge has always traveled in the rural South. Through food pantry lines in small towns, through Wednesday night church dinners where someone mentions they know a woman who built a house from a shipping container, through shelter waiting rooms where a man sketches a wiring diagram on a napkin for a stranger who just lost her apartment. A woman in rural Alabama told a reporter she learned the entire foundation and ventilation method from a conversation at a free health clinic in Meridian. The woman who taught her had learned it from someone else at a Salvation Army meal in Mobile. This approach works in rural areas for reasons that do not transfer to cities. Available land with willing owners, relaxed enforcement of building codes, access to agricultural and industrial waste streams that produce free building materials, communities where neighbors are more inclined to help than to report. In urban areas, every one of those conditions reverses, which is why this quiet movement of self-built shelter is concentrated in the rural Deep South and almost completely invisible to anyone watching from a city. The question people always ask is whether this represents a housing solution or a failure of the housing system. Tamara does not think about it in those terms. She thinks about it in terms of what was available and what she did with it. Nobody should have to build their own shelter from a damaged steel box in a field. But the fact that someone can, and that the result is a dry, insulated, powered, livable home that has outlasted 4 Mississippi winters and summers without a single mortgage payment or rent check, says something about what is possible when conventional options disappear and stubbornness takes over. Her son does not remember the Chevy Malibu. He does not remember sleeping in a car seat wrapped in blankets in a church parking lot. His earliest clear memories are of a home with steel walls, LED lights that run on sunshine, rain drumming on a metal roof above his bed, and a mother who built the whole thing with borrowed tools and materials that everyone else threw away. If resourcefulness like this matters to you, subscribing helps more people find this video. And the video on screen right now documents a completely different off-grid survival build with methods every bit as creative as these. Click it and keep going.